That night, amid the clinking glasses and expensive lights, my mother-in-law leaned in, her aristocratic smile chilling me to the bone. She placed a hand on the woman beside my husband and said the words that froze the air, "Meet your replacement." I was sitting right there, his legal wife. I didn't cry. I smiled. I knew they would do this, and I had already prepared the bomb that would detonate their entire elegant dinner party. My name is Madeline Flores. Tonight, I am sitting in the most coveted booth at the Beacon Room, the one tucked into the curved glass corner overlooking the marina at Bay Ridge Harbor. This is where the city's old money and new tech titans come to be seen, their diamonds competing with the lights of the yachts bobbing in the dark water. The air smells of seared scallops, old world wine, and the faint, sharp tang of entitlement. I am here because I was invited. That's the word my husband, Grant Ellington, used in his text message yesterday afternoon. It landed on my phone with a cold, final thud. We're having a family dinner, 8 o'clock, the Beacon Room. Don't be late, not a question, not a discussion. It was a summons, delivered with the same impersonal efficiency he used to schedule his quarterly board meetings. I arrived precisely 4 minutes late, a small, petty rebellion, enough to be noticed, not enough to be called out. Grant was already at the table. Of course. He rose as I approached, a perfect marble statue of a husband. He smelled of his cedarwood cologne and expensive wool. He pulled out my chair, his hand brushing my elbow, a gesture that looked like affection to the surrounding tables but felt like a cattle prod to me. "Madeline, darling, you made it," he said, his voice a smooth baritone that charmed senators and investors alike. But the smile was pure business. It was the smile of a man rearranging his portfolio, not greeting his wife. And that's when I saw who we included. Seated to Grant's right, in the spot that was usually mine, was Lauren Pike, his first wife. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere twin set and the Ellington pearls, the ones I was never offered. She looked preserved, timeless, like a pristine photograph from a life I had only heard about in whispers. Next to her, slouching in a way that only a teenager can, was their daughter, Sienna. She was all restless limbs and bored, angry eyes, stabbing at a bread roll with a silver knife. She wore a dark green velvet dress, an outfit that screamed family portrait, not dinner with Dad's new wife. And at the head of the table, presiding over the entire morbid affair like a queen holding court, was Evelyn Ellington, my mother-in-law. Her silver hair was coiled in a flawless chignon. Her eyes, the same piercing, assessing blue as her son's, swept over me. They didn't just see me, they catalogued me. The dress too simple, the jewelry not Ellington, the faint tension in my shoulders a failure of composure. In her gaze, I was not family, I was a temporary employee, perhaps a well-dressed server, who had been mistakenly seated at the main table. The meal was a masterpiece of passive aggression. Small talk was lobbed across the table like grenades wrapped in silk. Evelyn inquired about a charity gala, her question directed pointedly at Lauren, who answered with a practiced ease that highlighted my own silence. Grant discussed Sienna's upcoming SATs, playing the role of the proud, involved father. He refilled Lauren's wine glass. He didn't notice mine was empty. He was so gentle with them, so achingly familiar. It wasn't the detached courtesy he showed me. It was the worn-in, comfortable cadence of a life that had never truly been interrupted. He wasn't a husband dining with his wife. He was a proprietor, checking on his most valuable assets, making sure his original heirlooms were polished and in their rightful place. I watched him laugh at something Sienna muttered, a real, unguarded laugh, and a cold bolt of clarity shot through me. This wasn't a dinner. It was an announcement. Evelyn waited for the main courses to be cleared. The waiter, a young man with nervous eyes, refilled the water glasses. The murmur of the restaurant seemed to fade, the light narrowing to focus on our table. A perfect, brutal spotlight. Evelyn dabbed her lips with a napkin. She placed it beside her plate, a small white flag of surrender that was actually a declaration of war. She turned her regal head, not to me, but to Lauren. She smiled, a thin, bloodless expression that was more terrifying than any snarl. Then, she leaned in. She placed one perfectly manicured, heavily jeweled hand on Lauren's shoulder. It was a gesture of knighting, an anointing. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the air with the precision of a scalpel, meant for every ear at the table. "Meet your replacement, darling," she said. The words hung in the air, toxic and shimmering. Everything stopped. Sienna's fork clattered onto her plate. The waiter, who had been approaching with a bottle of Sancerre, froze, his body half-turned, a deer in the headlights of our family wreckage. Even Grant looked momentarily startled. Not by the sentiment, but by the timing. He shot his mother a look of mild irritation, the kind you'd give an associate who spoke out of turn. They all looked at me. Evelyn, Grant, Lauren, even Sienna, her teenage apathy cracking to reveal a flicker of morbid curiosity. They were waiting for the explosion. They were waiting for the tears, the denial, the hissed accusations. They were waiting for the scene that would confirm my unsuitability, my lack of Ellington composure. They wanted the chaotic, emotional Latina breaking down, proving she never belonged in their cold, white marble world. I gave them nothing. I felt the heavy weight of my clutch purse in my lap. Inside, my phone was dark, but the screen was active. The little red light of the audio recorder app had been glowing steadily for the past 45 minutes. Beside the phone, sealed and heavy, was a thick manila envelope. It was full of printouts, bank statements, and annotated emails, evidence, the kind they didn't know I had. I took a slow sip of my water. I met Evelyn's gaze, and I smiled. Just a small lift at one corner of my mouth, a smirk. The discomfort that rippled through them was immediate. It was exquisite. The victim was not playing her part. The replacement was not weeping. The script had been tossed out the window. And the new one, the one I had written, was far more interesting. I looked at Evelyn, the architect of my humiliation. I looked at Lauren, the ghost she was trying to resurrect. I looked at Grant, my husband, the man who had thumbtacked me to this display board like a dead butterfly. I held their gazes, one by one. I let the silence stretch. They thought this was the end of my story. They thought this was the night I was erased. How could I explain to them that this was just the beginning? You can't understand the satisfaction of this moment, the cold, clean click of the trap snapping shut, without knowing how they said it, to understand why I'm smiling. We have to go back. We have to go back 1 month, to a time when I still believed I was a wife, and not just a placeholder. We have to go back to the start, to see how an American Cinderella story became a crime scene, and I was the only one who knew it. It all seems so clear now, sitting in the wreckage of that dinner. But a year ago I was blind. I was 34 years old, and I thought I was living a miracle. Before Grant, my life was my own. I was the communications director for the Brightline Cultural Initiative, a nonprofit that fought to get arts funding into underserved city schools. My world was grant proposals, community outreach, and the constant, satisfying hustle of trying to make a small difference. I had a tiny, rent-controlled apartment filled with books and 2 mismatched sofas. I was happy, or I thought I was. I met Grant Ellington at our annual fundraising gala. He was the guest of honor, a name our development team had chased for years. He was recently, and very publicly, divorced. The city papers called him a charming, self-made billionaire, which was only half true. The charm was real. But the self-made part ignored the massive seed money from his mother's side of the family. He ran Ellington Urban Holdings, a real estate empire that was either revitalizing the city or aggressively gentrifying it, depending on which newspaper you read. He was electric. When he walked into that rented ballroom, the energy shifted. He was tall, with that effortless, old-world posture, and a smile that seemed to include you in a private, wonderful secret. He found me by the silent auction table, where I was trying to fix a wobbly display. "That's a losing battle," he said, his voice that smooth baritone I would come to know so well. He didn't just look at me. He focused. "You're Madeline Flores. You wrote that incredible op-ed on the cultural endowment gap. "I've been wanting to meet you." He knew my name. He had read my work. I was, for the first time in my professional life, completely disarmed. We talked for 20 minutes, ignoring the clinking glasses and the speeches. We didn't talk about his buildings or my funding. We talked about art, about the city, about a shared, abstract desire to leave a mark. He pledged an 8-figure donation that night, and the next day, he sent flowers to my office with a simple card. Dinner, the romance was a blur, a high-speed, high-gloss montage. He didn't date, he courted. There were private gallery viewings after hours, weekend trips to Napa on a jet that was just a timeshare, and long, late-night conversations where he made me feel like the most brilliant, essential woman in the world. Then, I met Evelyn. She received me in the formal drawing room of the Ellington family home, a stone fortress in the old part of town. She didn't like me. It was immediate and visceral. She looked at my Latin background not as a heritage, but as a complication. She saw my middle-class upbringing not as a point of pride, but as a lack of pedigree. But she accepted me, reluctantly. I was naive enough to think my intelligence had won her over. The truth, I learned later, was far more cynical. Grant, and by extension, Ellington Urban Holdings, was still cleaning up the PR fallout from a nasty environmental lawsuit filed the year before. Allegations of cut corners and contaminated groundwater had tarnished the charming billionaire brand. And then I came along, Madeline Flores, bright, articulate, and the passionate face of a beloved cultural nonprofit. I wasn't just a girlfriend, I was an alibi. Marrying me wasn't just a romance. It was the final step in rehabilitating his public image. The wedding was planned in 6 weeks. It was tasteful, expensive, and felt more like a press event than a celebration. When the prenuptial agreement was presented, it came via Grant's lawyer, not Grant himself, just a formality, the attorney said, his voice bored. A standard procedure for any family of this stature. It protects you both. I signed it. I signed it because I was in love, and because questioning it would imply I was the gold digger Evelyn already believed me to be. I signed it to prove I was better than their suspicions. We moved into Marble Oaks Estate. The name alone should have been a warning. It wasn't a house. It was a compound. We lived behind 10-foot iron gates, with 24-hour security and cameras that scanned every car. Our neighbors were tech billionaires and shipping magnates. People so wealthy they had achieved a kind of invisibility. The house was a glass and steel monstrosity, cold and echoing, with a staff that anticipated my needs before I even knew I had them. My life was instantly, surgically, altered. I left Brightline. Evelyn insisted that the wife of Grant Ellington couldn't be seen still working a 9-to-5. My new role was to be the docile, elegant wife. I organized his dinner parties, approving menus from chefs I'd only read about. I chaired fundraisers for the opera and the art museum, causes Evelyn deemed appropriate. I was his silent, smiling companion at award ceremonies where he was lauded for his vision and philanthropy that I often sourced and structured for him. And through it all, there was the ghost of the first family. They never said Lauren's name with malice. It was worse. They spoke of her, and of Sienna, with a casual reverence. Grant's first daughter, people would say at parties. A brilliant equestrian. Sienna is such a credit to the Ellington name. I was the current wife, but Sienna was the legacy. Grant was reassuring. At first, that part of my life is over. Madeline, you are my life now. We'll have our own children. We'll make our own legacy. Just give it time. But Evelyn never missed a chance to draw the comparison. She would watch me fumble with a seating chart or express an opinion on politics, and she would sigh, a tiny, perfumed puff of disappointment. Lauren always put the family first, she'd say, her gaze drifting out the window. She understood that a woman's true work is the home, not a career. She was telling me, in her coded, upper-class way, that I was a pale imitation, a temporary placeholder, a dress-up doll who didn't quite fit the clothes. I ignored it. I buried the doubt. I told myself this was the price of entry. This was the adjustment period. I was building a new life, a grand life. with a man I believed I loved. I just needed to be patient. I just needed to prove my loyalty. And I held on to his promise, the one thing I was sure would secure my place and silence the whispers a child. Our child. Once we had a baby, I would no longer be the second wife. I would be the mother of the next Ellington. I would be real. I would be permanent. The shift began subtly. The foundation of our marriage didn't crack with a single, seismic shock. It eroded, grain by grain, until I was standing on a precipice. It started with absence. Grant, who had once been so present he seemed to fill every room, became a ghost in his own home. He was always at the office, always in meetings. The excuses were vague and grand, delivered via text messages or brief. Distracted phone calls, darling, swamped tonight, restructuring the family fund, meeting with the legacy advisors. It's incredibly tedious. Don't wait up. Family fund. Legacy. These were words he used like shields, deflecting any further questions. It sounded important, responsible, and utterly boring. It was the perfect cover. I was left alone in the vast, silent house, the silence amplifying my unease. I found myself wandering, tidying things that were already tidy. One evening, I was in his home office, a room paneled in dark, imposing mahogany, sorting a stack of mail he'd ignored. That's when I saw the bank statements. I wasn't snooping, not really. It was our joint household account, the one I used to pay the caterers and the landscape architects. I saw a recurring charge, a significant one, a wire transfer for the same amount, on the 15th of every month, to an entity I'd never heard of, Northstone Family Office, LLC. It wasn't one of Grant's known holdings. It wasn't a vendor. It was just a name, a corporate void, siphoning thousands of dollars from our shared life. I made a mental note of the name. It felt cold, impersonal, and sharp. The unease settled deeper, like a stone in my gut. A few days later, he left his iPad on the kitchen island, a rare oversight for a man so meticulous. It was synced to his personal calendar. I told myself I was just checking to see if he was free for a charity dinner I was supposed to RSVP to. My finger hovered over the screen. I opened the app. The calendar was a sea of gray blocks labeled Hold EUH or Call Investor Name. But one entry, 3 weeks from now, stood out. It was bright red. Legacy dinner, full family. It was booked at the Beacon Room, the very place we were sitting tonight. It had been on his schedule for over a month. Full family. He had never used that term for us. We were his family, yes, but full family implied completion, a closed circle. He had never once mentioned this dinner to me. I closed the iPad, the glass cold beneath my trembling fingers. I needed to know. The doubt was an itch I couldn't scratch. I started looking, not out of malice, but out of a desperate need to prove my own paranoia wrong. I wanted to find a receipt for a surprise anniversary trip. I wanted to find an email confirming a new home we were buying. I wanted to find anything that proved I was still part of the legacy he was so busy building. I went back to his office. I didn't know what I was looking for. His files were organized by subject, by year, by entity: Ellington Urban Holdings, Marble Oaks Estate, Philanthropic Endowments. And then I saw a file I'd never noticed, pushed to the back of his personal drawer, labeled simply Medical, Private. My heart hammered. This was a violation. This was the one line I swore I would never cross. But I thought of the empty nights, the family fund, the dinner I wasn't invited to. I thought of my own medical file, sitting on my nightstand, the one filled with fertility clinic brochures and blood test results. I opened it. It was mostly old physicals, standard stuff. And then I saw it, a surgical report from a private clinic, dated 7 years ago. 7 years, 2 full years before he met me, 1 year after his divorce from Lauren. The procedure was a vasectomy. I read the words. I read them again. The clinical, detached language swam before my eyes. Bilateral, successful. Patient reports permanent sterilization as objective. I sat down hard in his leather chair. the air rushing from my lungs. 7 years. All the months he'd held my hand and said, "Let's just try naturally for a few more months." Darling, all the times he'd looked at me with that patient, loving smile and said, "These things take time. We can't rush a miracle." All the appointments, all the times I went to the fertility specialist alone, because Grant was stuck in a meeting. I saw the doctor's kind, pitying face as she reviewed my charts. I heard her voice, "Madeline, your results are perfect. You're healthy. Maybe you just need to reduce your stress." My stress. He had let me go through it. He had let me pump my body with hormones. He had let me blame myself, my work, my anxiety, month after month, when he knew from the first night we were together that it was impossible. He knew. And he had built our entire future on that devastating, unspoken lie. I felt sick. I put the file back, my hands moving with robotic precision, wiping the drawer handle with my sleeve. The coldness was spreading, a numbness starting in my chest and creeping out to my fingertips. The house, which had once felt like a grand, new beginning, now felt like a prison, a beautiful glass-walled cage. That night, I went looking for comfort, for a piece of the man I thought I'd married. I went down to the wine cellar, a temperature-controlled room that was more of a library for bottles. He kept old family items stored in a locked cabinet there. I knew where he kept the key. I wasn't looking for files this time. I was looking for him, for us. I found old photo albums, heavy and bound in dark blue leather. I opened the first one. It was him and Lauren, their wedding, their old life. I expected that. But as I flipped through, the photos changed. The clothes became more modern. Sienna was no longer a child. She was a teenager. The settings were familiar. There they were, the three of them, Grant, Lauren, and Sienna laughing on the deck of the family lodge at Seaford Bluffs. Grant had his arm around Lauren. Sienna was holding his hand. I looked at the date stamp on the back of the photograph. It was from 6 months ago, 6 months into our marriage. He had told me he was at a banking conference in Singapore that weekend. I sat on the cold stone floor, the album heavy in my lap. I was the other woman. I was the interruption. He hadn't ended his first family. He had just sidelined them, temporarily. I was still sitting there in the dark when he came home. I heard his keys hit the marble tray upstairs. He called my name, but I didn't answer. He eventually found me in the cellar, my face pale, the album open on the floor. He didn't panic. He just looked tired. "Madeline, what are you doing down here?" "It's freezing." Before I could say anything, his phone, sitting on the table beside him, lit up. A text message. Notification. It was from Evelyn. I saw the preview line, clear as day in the dim light. "Have you told her we must get the family back to how it was before the board approves the fund?" The pieces didn't just fall into place. They slammed together with the force of a car crash. The family fund, the legacy, the full family dinner, the vasectomy, the recent photos, Evelyn's text. It wasn't a puzzle. It was a schematic. I finally understood. The family he spoke of to the world, the one he needed to present to this mysterious board, was not him and me. It was never him and me. It was him, Lauren, and Sienna, the original set, the pure Ellington line. And me, I was the placeholder, the image consultant, the temporary wife he'd used to look stable and new, to ride out a PR storm. And now? My contract was up. I looked up at him, this stranger who had slept in my bed, who had let me cry in his arms over a child he knew would never exist. The warmth was gone. The love was gone. All the trust I had placed in him, all the belief in our miracle story, shattered and turned to ice if he would not, and could not, have a child with me. And he was actively maintaining his past. Then what was I? What was my role in this elaborate corporate structure he called a life? I knew the answer. I was a liability to be managed, a line item to be zeroed out. The suspicion was gone, replaced by a terrible, cold certainty. He wasn't just planning to leave me, he was planning to erase me. I waited for him in the study. I didn't turn on the main lights. just the small, green-shaded lamp on his desk. The room was cast in shadows, the mahogany paneling looking less like wood and more like dried blood in the dim light. I sat in his chair, the one he always sat in, the leather cool and unyielding against my back. He came home just after 11. I heard the familiar, heavy tread of his footsteps on the marble floor of the foyer, the jingle of his keys, the soft thud of his briefcase. He would be tired, expecting the house to be dark, expecting me to be in bed, waiting, like a good wife. He pushed open the study door without knocking. "Madeline, what are you?" He stopped when he saw me in his chair. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed, his perfect posture stiffening. It was the look of a man whose routine had been inconveniently interrupted. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was calm. It didn't waver. I had been practicing it in my head for hours. "It's late," he said, loosening his tie, his default move for asserting casual control. "Whatever it is, can't it wait until morning?" 7 years ago, I said, my hands folded on his desk. "You had a vasectomy." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I watched him, his hands stilled on his tie. The mask didn't slip, but the eyes hardened. The charming philanthropic husband vanished, and the CEO of Ellington Urban Holdings took his place. He assessed me. He was calculating the damage, the source of the leak. "You've been in my private files," he stated. He was angry about the breach of protocol, not the betrayal of the soul. "You've been in my body," I countered, the calmness finally cracking, just a little. "You let me go to doctors. You let me inject myself with hormones. You let me cry when my period came, month after month. You held my hand and you lied." He sighed, a sound of pure, exasperated privilege. He walked past me, to the crystal decanter on the side table, and poured himself a whiskey. He didn't offer me one. "It's not that simple." "Madeline," he said, turning to face me, the glass a shield in his hand. "It's the simplest thing in the world. Grant, you can't have children. You chose not to have children, and you never told me." He took a sip. "It was a business decision." I stared at him. "A what?" "A business decision," he repeated, his voice cold and even, the one he used on conference calls. "I have a bloodline. I have an heir. My situation with Lauren was complicated, but Sienna was, and is, the designated successor to the Ellington assets. Any further children, especially in a new marriage, would complicate the trusts. It would dilute the legacy. I made a strategic choice to control genetic and financial risk." Genetic and financial risk. That's what I was. That's what our potential children were. A risk to be managed. "So where did I fit into this business plan?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He actually looked at me, a flicker of that old, assessing charm. He thought for a moment, as if crafting a performance review. "You were wonderful for my public image," he said, as if this were a compliment. "You were smart, you were passionate, you came from a background that gave me authenticity. You helped stabilize the brand after the environmental suit. Everyone has a role. Madeline, you played yours beautifully." I felt the blood drain from my face. I wasn't his wife. I was his PR strategy. "So now what?" I asked, the numbness spreading. "Now that the brand is stable." He walked over to the desk, but he didn't touch me. He leaned against it, the picture of a reasonable, powerful man. "Now, we begin a civilized transition," he said, the words as sterile as the surgical report in his file. "We'll be amicable. We'll release a joint statement. You'll be taken care of. Of course, the prenup is ironclad, but I'm not a monster. I'll provide a generous severance, a settlement, as long as this remains dignified." Dignified. He wanted me to be a quiet, dignified footnote. "And the dinner?" I asked, the last piece clicking into place. "The legacy dinner, at the Beacon Room." His eyes flashed with annoyance again. "You saw that too." He waved his hand dismissively. That's a separate matter. It's about the Ellington Heritage Fund. The board is voting, and they are traditional. They need to see continuity. They need to see stability. They need to see the original family. Lauren and Sienna. You need to look like you're back together, I translated. The ice in my veins complete. I need to look seamless, he corrected. It's what's best for the family, for the fund. It's nothing personal. Madeline, it's just what has to be done. The phone call from Evelyn came the next afternoon. I was sitting in the immaculate, sun-drenched living room, surrounded by art I hadn't chosen, when the housekeeper brought me the cordless phone. Evelyn, for you, Mrs. Ellington. I took it. Hello, Evelyn. Madeline. Her voice was like brittle, expensive lace, all old-world vowels and aristocratic chill. Grant tells me you had a conversation. We did. Good. Then you understand. It was not a question. I'm calling to ensure there are no unpleasant displays. This family has a very specific structure. Madeline, it has functioned this way for decades, long before you were a part of it, and it will function this way long after. Long after me. Grant's primary responsibility is to his name, to his daughter. You were a complication he found charming, but now we are returning to our natural state. I'm sure you can appreciate the need for order. Don't make things difficult. I could hear the unspoken threat. Don't be the loud, messy, Latina wife. Don't be the uncultured gold digger we always knew you were. In that moment, I saw the entire narrative they were writing. They weren't just divorcing me. They were spinning a story. I would be the greedy second wife who couldn't accept her husband's love for his daughter. I would be the unstable one who didn't fit into their refined culture. They would leak stories about my emotional outbursts, my unreasonable demands. They would paint me as the villain, and Lauren's return as a noble, necessary correction to restore the family's dignity. I felt a surge of something hot and blinding. It wasn't just sadness. It was rage, a deep, cold, structural rage. They hadn't just betrayed me. They were planning to rewrite my entire existence to suit their balance sheet. I took a deep breath. The rage subsided, and something else took its place. Something hard and sharp. I understand completely, Evelyn, I said, my voice as smooth and placid as hers. Good, she said, a note of satisfied dismissal in her tone. I'm glad to see you're being sensible. I went to find Grant. He was in his dressing room, choosing a watch. I stood in the doorway, and he looked up, wary. I spoke to your mother, I said. He tensed. And I gave him the best smile I could muster, a sad, resigned, broken smile. I let him see the victim he wanted, the wife who was folding. It's okay, Grant, I get it. It's a lot. But I understand. I'll be fine. The relief that washed over his face was disgusting. He visibly relaxed, the CEO persona softening. He thought he'd won. He thought I was beaten. Thank you, Madeline, he said, walking over, even daring to touch my hair. You're a good woman. This is for the best. I nodded, letting a fake tear well in my eye. I'll do whatever you need me to do. He left for the office, whistling. I went back to our bedroom, the one that was never really mine, and locked the door. The period of being the hurt, blindsided wife was over. That phase had lasted exactly 24 hours. My mind, the mind that had built a nonprofit from scratch, that had balanced budgets and charmed donors and written killer grant proposals, switched on. I was no longer a wife. I was a strategist. They wanted to frame me. They wanted to erase me. I had helped build Grant's public image. I knew exactly where all the bodies were buried. I had been his partner, his confidant, his PR guru. He had given me all the weapons I would ever need. My hurt was a luxury I could no longer afford. I opened my laptop. The new phase had begun. I wasn't a victim. I was a researcher. And my first order of business was to start gathering evidence. I didn't go to just any lawyer. I went to the best. I cashed out a quiet savings account my mother had left me. Money Grant and Evelyn didn't know about, and I booked a 2-hour consultation with Alicia Romero. Alicia's office was not in the quiet, carpeted buildings where Grant's lawyers operated. It was in a sharp, glass and steel tower downtown, an office that hummed with a palpable, aggressive energy. Alicia was a legend, a woman who had systematically dismantled the fortunes of some of the richest, most powerful men in the city. She specialized in second wives and complex, high-asset dissolutions. She didn't offer me tea or coffee. She offered me a glass of water and a legal pad. "Okay, Madeline Flores," she said, her voice a rapid-fire, precise instrument. "I've read your file. You're the PR miracle who married Grant Ellington. He's been moving money for 6 months, and his mother is Evelyn Ellington. I'm guessing this isn't an amicable split." I just nodded, momentarily stunned by her efficiency. "Good," she said, opening a file. "Your prenup is garbage. It was designed to do one thing: make you feel so grateful for the scraps he offered that you'd never challenge the fortress he kept. But even scraps can be fought over. What do you know?" I took a deep breath. "I know he had a vasectomy 7 years ago and never told me. I know he's been taking his first wife and daughter on family vacations. And I know he's been making regular, large payments to an entity called Northstone Family Office, LLC. Alicia's pen stopped moving. She looked up, a gleam of genuine, predatory interest in her dark eyes. "Northstone. You've heard of it. It's a black box. Honey," she said, leaning forward. "It's a family office, a way for the ultra-wealthy to manage their money with zero transparency. They use it to buy art, yachts, and loyalty, all under a corporate veil. If Grant is moving money there, he's not just hiding it for a divorce, he's reallocating it. Let's dig." She had a forensic accountant on her team. Within an hour, while I sat in her sterile, white leather conference room, they had a map. "Okay," she said, projecting a flowchart onto a large screen. It looked like a battle plan. "It's exactly as I thought. Your husband is moving assets out of your shared estate, or what should be your shared estate, and into Northstone. But Northstone is just a hallway. From there, the money makes one more jump." She clicked a button. A new box appeared. "The Ellington Lineage Trust." "Who are the beneficiaries?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Not you," Alicia said flatly. "The sole, unchangeable beneficiaries are Lauren Pike and her issue, Sienna Pike. He's liquidating his marital assets, the ones you would have a claim to. Even with the prenup and using them to fund his legacy trust, he's not just divorcing you, he's stealing from you, legally." I should have felt more anger, but all I felt was that familiar, cold ice. "So I fight for my share." Alicia shook her head, and this is when the true, bone-chilling fear set in. "It's not that simple. This is too much work, too much exposure. Just for a clean break. Men like Grant Ellington don't get their hands this dirty unless they have a reason. They don't just want to get rid of you. They want to discredit you. They need a cover story for why they're moving all this money and reinstalling the first wife." She leaned in, her voice dropping. "My guess, they're going to build a narrative. They'll paint you as unstable, greedy, or worse. They're going to create a reason for this divorce that makes them the victims." She looked at my file again. "You ran a nonprofit. You have experience in cultural initiatives." "Yes, Brightline," I said. "Before I married him." "They'll use that," she said. "They'll say you were mishandling money, that Grant had to, sadly, step in. They'll create a story where he discovered your incompetence, or your theft, and had to protect the family name by separating from you." A sick feeling rose in my throat. This was exactly the kind of story Evelyn would write. "So what do I do?" "You become a better spy than they are," Alicia said, her tone all business. "You're still in the house. You have access. I want you to go home and photograph everything. Every email from his lawyers, every bank statement, every document on his desk. Pay special attention to anything you signed. I want to see every digital signature they might have on file." She paused, then looked at me with an intensity that was terrifying. "And one more thing. I want you to run your credit, right now, on my computer." "My credit?" "It's excellent. I don't care. I want to see what they've done with it." I sat at her guest terminal, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type my social security number. The report loaded, my score was high, my cards were all paid, and then, under new accounts, I saw it. It was a business entity, a nonprofit organization, Crownlight Community Arts. "Alicia," I said, my voice thin. "What is this?" She was beside me in a second, reading the screen. "Registered 3 months ago," she murmured. "Director and sole signing officer, Madeline Flores. You?" "I have never heard of this company in my life," I whispered. "I didn't file this." Alicia was already on the phone to her accountant. "Trace it. Crownlight Community Arts. I want to know where its money came from and where it's going." It took 20 minutes. 20 of the longest minutes of my life, spent staring at a corporate flowchart that now felt like my own execution warrant. The accountant's voice came over the speakerphone, tinny and detached. "Got it. Crownlight was seated with a single $2 million donation from a subsidiary of Ellington Urban Holdings. The donation was approved by Grant Ellington. 1 week later, Crownlight Community Arts awarded its entire operating budget in a single cultural grant to a shell corporation in Delaware. The money is gone. It vanished." I stood up, the room tilting. They had used my name. They had used my background in the arts. They had created a fake charity in my name, funded it with their own money, and then made that money disappear, leaving me as the sole person responsible. If anyone investigated, the paper trail would lead to me. The director, the woman with the nonprofit background, the greedy second wife. Alicia Romero hung up the phone. She looked at me, her face grim, all the lawyerly aggression replaced by a cold, hard assessment of my reality. "I was wrong," she said. "This is worse than a bad narrative." She tapped the screen, right on my name. "They're not just planning to divorce you. They're not just trying to discredit you." She met my eyes. "They're planning to put you in jail. They're building a get-out-of-jail-free card for themselves. When this fund implodes, or when Grant needs a final, public reason to cut you off and restore his sainted first wife, they will discover your fraud. They will be the victims of the scheming, thieving, second wife." She pointed to the flowchart, to the box with my name in it. "They're not just trying to get rid of you, Madeline. They're using you as a trash fire. They're going to set you ablaze to keep their own house clean." In that moment, everything I'd felt for Grant, the love, the nostalgia, the sadness, even the anger, it all burned away. It was gone. This was no longer a marriage. It wasn't even a divorce. It was self-defense. I left Alicia's office with a pounding heart and a list. The first items were all legal file for a credit freeze. Hire the forensic accountant. Start a new, secure cloud account. But there was one item on the list I had added myself. One that Alicia would have called insane. Talk to Lauren. In the clean, ruthless world of the Ellingtons, Lauren Pike was the designated enemy. She was the ghost I was meant to banish, the one they were now using to replace me. But looking at the flowchart of my own destruction, I realized she wasn't the enemy. She was the prototype. I couldn't call the house. Evelyn would be listening. I couldn't email her official Ellington-managed account, so I dug. I went back through old gala invitations, the ones from my first few months as the new Mrs. Ellington. I found a planning committee list from an art museum benefit, and there it was, L. Pike, with a private Gmail address, one she probably used for catalogs and old college friends. It was the biggest risk I had taken yet. What if she just forwarded it to Grant? My subject line was simple. A mutual interest regarding Evelyn. The email was short. Lauren, I know you have no reason to trust me. I am the woman who is currently married to your ex-husband, but I have information that proves we are both being manipulated by Grant and his mother in the same way. The information involves the Ellington Heritage Fund, and it directly affects the future they are selling you for Sienna. I also have proof that they are engaged in criminal activity, and they are setting me up to take the fall. Before you go to that legacy dinner as their prop, you deserve to know what you're really walking into. No lawyers, just you and me, Madeline. I sent it from a new, encrypted email account at 6 in the morning. She replied at 6:05. The tea house at Riverside Quarter, 10 o'clock. Come alone. The tea house was neutral ground. It was a quiet, minimalist space, all pale bamboo and the gentle sound of running water. A place where no one from the Marble Oaks estate or the Bay Ridge Harbor set would ever be seen. I saw her in the back booth, and my first thought was she looks exhausted. This wasn't the woman from the photographs at Seaford Bluffs. This wasn't the regal queen-in-waiting from the upcoming dinner. She was a woman in a gray sweater and jeans. Her hair pulled back in a simple clasp. The famous Ellington pearls were gone. She looked, for the first time, like a person, not a concept. I sat down. She didn't say hello. She just watched me, her eyes wary. "Thank you for coming," I said. "I'm here for Sienna," she said, her voice low and tight. "Not for you. You have 5 minutes to explain why you sent that email." "I thought you were the homewrecker," she said before I could speak, the words coming out in a rush of old, stored-up pain. "For 2 years, I believed Grant left me, or at least stayed away, because he'd found someone new. You, younger, from a different world. I hated you. When did Grant leave you?" I asked, my voice just as quiet. "He officially moved out 8 years ago," she said, her gaze dropping to the table. "Sienna was 10. I met Grant 2 years ago. Lauren, 18 months ago. I married him." She looked up, the math slowly clicking behind her eyes. The hostility wavered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. "But we were..." "You were what?" "He always told me I was the homewrecker," she said, her voice cracking. "He told me I drove him away, that my lack of ambition was a millstone. He said he needed financial freedom, that the marriage was holding back his legacy. He left me to build his empire. I thought you were the prize he got for doing it." "He left you to protect his money," I said, the cold clarity of Alicia's office echoing in the quiet tea house. "And he married me to protect his image." A look of dawning, shared disgust passed between us. "So what is this?" she asked. "Why are you here? He's divorcing you. I'm aware. He and Evelyn have been very clear." "They're not just divorcing me," I said. I leaned forward. "They are framing me. They are setting me up to take the fall for a financial crime, to make me look like a thief. So they have a clean, public-facing reason to throw me out and bring you back in. They need a villain so you can be the hero." "That's insane," she whispered, but her eyes said she believed every word. "Is it Lauren? They are pressuring you to come back, aren't they? To be the nominal wife again? To be at this legacy dinner, to smile for the board of the Heritage Fund?" She didn't answer. She just reached into her tote bag and pulled out her phone. She unlocked it and pushed it across the table, an open email thread visible on the screen. The sender was Evelyn Ellington. My stomach turned. The emails were brutal. "Lauren, you must stop being difficult. Your role in this family is set. The board needs to see continuity. Grant is handling the girl, but you must be prepared to resume your position. This transitional period is over. The other girl was a necessary detour to solve a public relations problem. It is time for the family to be whole again. Your place has always been waiting." The other girl. I was a detour. "She's a monster," I whispered, reading the words. "She's a pragmatist," Lauren said, her voice bitter. "And she knows exactly where my leash is." She scrolled to another email. This one was shorter. "I assume you'll want Sienna to remain at Arborfield for her senior year. The tuition payment, as you know, is due from the trust, and I am the sole signatory on that trust. I expect to see you at dinner on the 7th. Dressed appropriately. $80,000 a year. That was the price of Lauren's compliance." "She's holding your daughter over your head," I said. "She's been doing it for 8 years," Lauren said, her voice shaking with a rage that was so old it had turned brittle. "I'm trapped, Madeline. I'm completely dependent on that family's money. I haven't had a job in 25 years. They put me in a beautiful cage, and now Evelyn just jingles the keys when she wants me to sing." We just looked at each other, two women, sitting in a quiet tea house, who had been put into two different boxes on the same Ellington flowchart. I was the temporary PR solution. She was the legacy wife in storage, and Evelyn was the one running the entire inventory. "He's always been obsessed with it," Lauren said, almost to herself. "The bloodline. After Sienna was born, it was all he talked about. The Ellington heir. He was terrified I'd get pregnant again. He said it would dilute the line. He said Sienna was the true and only successor." "It's why he had the vasectomy," I said. Lauren's head snapped up. "What?" "7 years ago, right after he left you, 2 years before he met me, he never told me. He let me go to fertility doctors for a year. He let me think I was the problem." The color drained from Lauren's face. The last bit of her composure crumbled. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He's not just a liar. He's cruel." "He's a criminal," I said, my voice hard. "And he's about to be a very famous one." I pulled out my own phone. I showed her the incorporation documents for Crown Light Community Arts. I showed her my name, forged in a perfect electronic signature. I showed her the bank statement from Ellington Holdings, wiring $2 million into the fake charity. And I showed her the final wire. 1 week later, moving all $2 million to an untraceable shell company in Delaware. "They're going to discover this," I said, my voice low and intense. "They'll discover that the messy, emotional, Latina second wife was a thief. Grant will be the victim. Evelyn will be the stoic matriarch. And you, Lauren, you will be the graceful, forgiving first wife he comes home to. They are using you as the finale to their story." Lauren looked sick. "What do you want from me?" "I'm not going to let them," I said. "I've hired Alicia Romero. We are going to expose them, but I need to be sure of one thing." I leaned in, and the tea house, the city, everything, fell away. It was just the two of us, two women who had been used, filed, and stored by the same machine. "I am going to that dinner, Lauren, and I'm going to detonate this. I am going to show them, and all their rich friends, exactly what they did. My question is, when the bomb goes off, whose side are you on?" She was quiet for a very long time. I could see the calculations, the tuition, the house, the safety, the shame. She was weighing her daughter's gilded cage against her daughter's soul. "He's teaching her, you know," Lauren said finally, her voice so quiet I could barely hear it. "He's teaching Sienna that this is normal, that women are assets to be managed, that you can buy and sell people. That truth doesn't matter. Only the balance sheet." She looked up at me, and for the first time, the fear in her eyes was gone. It was replaced by steel. "I don't want my daughter to grow up to be her grandmother," she said. "I don't want her to grow up to be her father." She slid her phone back into her bag and stood up. "I'll be at the dinner. I'll be wearing the pearls. I'll play the part they wrote for me. You just tell me when it's my cue." Having Lauren on my side was a psychological victory, but it wasn't a legal one. Alicia Romero made that very clear. She said between two wives doesn't mean anything in court. She'd clipped over the phone. "We have the corporate shell. Now we need to prove who held the pen. We need to tie Grant or Evelyn directly to the forgery." On Alicia's recommendation, I hired Jared Cole. He wasn't a divorce PI who sat in cars and took grainy photos. He was a digital ghost, a forensic cybersecurity expert who had once worked for the federal government. He was expensive, quiet, and terrifyingly effective. I fed him the incorporation documents for Crown Light Community Arts through a secure server. He called me 48 hours later on a burner phone he'd had messengered to me. "Got it," he said. His voice was flat, no emotion. "The digital signature you said you never made. the one that filed the incorporation papers for Crown Light. Yes, my heart was in my throat. It was created using DocuSign. The request was sent, signed, and returned within 3 minutes. But that's not the good part. The IP address that accessed the document, signed it, and completed the filing. It's not random. It's hardwired to a private server registered to the Ellington family office on Broad Street. I had to sit down. So, someone inside his office, not just someone, Jared said, and I could almost hear a grim smile. That server is firewalled from the rest of the company. It's the one they use for the family's personal finances. The one Evelyn and Grant use. Someone in that inner circle logged in and electronically forged your name. You've got them, Mrs. Ellington. They didn't just set up a shell. They held the gun. I had the how. Now I needed the why from their own mouths. Porter would need it. This was the hardest part. I had to go back into the lion's den. But this time, I had to play the lamb. I had to become the sad, confused, but still loving wife they expected me to be. I started with Evelyn. I baked. I brought a box of artisanal pastries from a bakery she loved. A peace offering. I found her in her own stone fortress of a home, in the sunroom, reading a prospectus. "Evelyn," I said, my voice trembling just the right amount. I'm so sorry about everything. I know I've been difficult. I wanted to talk." She looked up at me, her eyes like blue ice chips. She saw the pastries. She saw my posture, which I deliberately made smaller. My shoulders slumped. She smelled my surrender. "Well," she said, gesturing to a chair. "Sit. Don't make a scene." I placed the pastries on the table. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the family, about my role." I let my voice crack. "I'm just so confused." "There's nothing to be confused about," she said, her impatience clear. "I know. It's just all the finances. Grant keeps mentioning all this restructuring, and I'm worried. This was my move. I'd manufactured a problem. I left my purse in the car. I'm so flustered. I'll be right back." "Don't be long," she snapped. I walked out of the sunroom, leaving my clutch purse on the side table. Inside, my phone was already recording, the app set to audio only. I went out to my car, my hands shaking. I sat there and counted to 100. 100 seconds of her believing she was alone. Then, I heard a new voice through the app, connected to my earbuds. It was Paul, their asset manager. He must have had a meeting with her. Perfect. I walked back slowly, listening. "Don't like this, Evelyn," Paul was saying. His voice hushed. "The Crown Light entity is a massive exposure. If she fights the divorce, if her lawyers start digging..." "She won't." Evelyn's voice was sharp, cutting. "She's a child. She's here right now, sniveling and bringing muffins. She's beaten. The only thing that matters is concluding the transfer before the Heritage Fund board meets. And the $2 million, what do we say when it's discovered?" "We say what we plan to say," Evelyn snapped, and I stopped breathing. "We say she did it. We say the nonprofit girl got greedy. We express our shock and our disappointment. We shift the entire responsibility to the girl. It's clean. It's the only way to protect the lineage trust." I had it. I stepped back into the room, found my purse, and made my apologies. My head spinning. Evelyn dismissed me with a wave. I had her confessing to a conspiracy. Next was Grant. I knew I couldn't get him to confess to his mother. He was too smart. I had to find his own preparations. While he was at a legacy meeting, I went into his office. I knew the password to his computer. He'd given it to me a year ago when I was helping him draft remarks for a gala. He'd never bothered to change it. I was, after all, just his harmless, pretty wife. I searched his documents for Crown Light. Nothing. Madeline? Too many hits. I tried a different approach. I searched for press release. There it was. A file saved in a folder labeled Contingency. I opened it. It was a draft. A statement to the press, clearly written by his PR team. Ellington Urban Holdings confirmed today that Grant Ellington and his wife, Madeline Flores, are separating. The separation comes as the family grapples with the painful discovery of financial irregularities. We are saddened to learn that Ms. Flores appears to have used the Ellington family name and resources to establish a private fund, Crownlight Community Arts, without the family's knowledge. Millions from an Ellington endowment were diverted. I had to close the laptop. I felt a wave of nausea so profound I had to grip the desk. He hadn't just planned it. He had workshopped it. He had professionals write the very words that would ruin my life, make me unemployable, and possibly send me to prison. My entire identity was a contingency to be managed. That was the last piece of evidence I needed. I bundled everything: Jared's IP trace, the audio recording of Evelyn and her asset manager, the draft of the press release, the bank statements showing the $2 million transfer. I put it all on a secure, encrypted hard drive. I didn't go back to Alicia, not yet. I went to the State Financial Crimes Unit. I sat for 2 hours in a beige, humming room until a man named Agent Porter finally saw me. He looked tired, overworked, and deeply unimpressed by the address I'd given for my residence. "Mrs. Ellington," he said, not unkindly. "These are very serious accusations." "I know," I said. "I have the proof, and I'm here, right now, as a cooperating witness, to offer you the entire case. In exchange, I want full immunity for a crime I never intended to commit, but which has my name all over it." I plugged the drive into his computer. For the next hour, he was silent. He listened to Evelyn's voice. He read the press release. He followed the digital breadcrumbs from Jared Cole, which showed a forgery. He looked at the bank transfers, a clean, perfect loop from Ellington, to me, to a black hole in Delaware. Finally, he leaned back, his face grim. "Mrs. Ellington, what you have here is a textbook case of money laundering and fraud. They used your identity as a burnable pass-through. The press release, the audio, their intent to frame you is clear. So you'll arrest them." "Not yet," he said. "This is all gold, but it's circumstantial. Evelyn's audio is damning. But Grant can claim he knew nothing, that it was all his mother. He'll paint her as the villain to save himself, to get the whole nest. I need him. I need Grant, on tape, admitting he knows about the fraud and is actively part of the cover-up." My heart sank. "He'll never do that. He's too careful." "You're still in the house, aren't you?" Porter asked. "He still thinks you're the sad, broken wife." "Yes." "Then he's vulnerable. He's arrogant. He'll talk. You just need to give him a reason." I went home. The plan that formed in my mind was the most sickening and the most brilliant of my life. That night, I found Grant in the study. I did exactly what he expected. I cried. "Grant," I wept, letting the real tears of rage and humiliation finally come. I can't just lose us. I can't believe this is happening." He was instantly uncomfortable, but also, I could see, relieved, the crying woman he could manage. The silent, cold woman in the chair from a few nights ago was a problem. "Madeline, we've discussed this." "I know," I said, clutching his arm. "I know, but maybe we just need help, real help, before we sign any papers. I found a place, Halcyon Family Wellness. They specialize in high-stress couples. Just one session. Grant, please, so I know we tried everything." He looked at me, his eyes calculating. I could see the gears turning. He saw a final, performative act of trying that he could use later, to prove how amicable he'd been. He saw a way to manage my emotions through a third party. "All right, Madeline," he sighed, patting my hand. "If it will make you feel better, one session, book it." I booked it, Halcyon Family Wellness, and I booked it under an assumed name. The therapist was Agent Porter's best undercover operative, a woman trained in financial forensic psychology, and the entire room was wired for high-fidelity audio and video. We sat on the plush, beige sofa. Grant was already looking at his watch. The therapist started. "So, You're here because you're considering a separation. But Madeline, you feel there's still hope. I don't understand why, I said, my voice thick with fake tears, my eyes on Grant. It's all so fast. It's all this talk about funds, and family, and money. It's like I don't know you. Madeline, this is business, Grant said, his voice tight. But it feels like more. I pushed. It feels dangerous. All these new companies. This Crown Light thing I found. I'm scared. Grant, it looks bad. What if someone finds out? Grant shot a venomous look at the therapist, then at me. This is not the place, Madeline. But it's why we're here, I cried. It's the thing that's breaking us, I feel like. Like you're setting me up, he snapped. The arrogance that Agent Porter predicted, the sheer, privileged annoyance, took over. He leaned in. His voice a low, furious hiss. Not for me, but for the therapist. She doesn't understand, he said, pointing at me as if I were a difficult pet. This has to be done. The fund has to be protected. And yes, it's messy. But the only way forward is to finalize the separation. We have to separate the assets, and we have to do it now, before any of this becomes public, before this whole Crown Light thing comes out. The therapist looked at him, her face calm. Before it comes out, Mr. Ellington. You sound as if you're aware of a potential legal problem. Grant stood up, finally realizing his mistake. This session is over. We're done. Thank you, Mr. Ellington, Agent Porter said, walking in from the adjoining room, his badge in his hand. I think you're right. We are done. The picture was now complete. The forgery, the money laundering, the press release to frame me, and now the recorded confession. They hadn't just built a cage for me. They'd built it, locked it, and then handed me the key. And I was about to use it. I came home from the sham therapy session at Halcyon Family Wellness with a chilling, newfound purpose. Agent Porter had his confession. Grant, in his infinite arrogance, had handed them the final piece of the puzzle on a silver platter. He'd been furious, not because he was caught, but because I had been hysterical in front of a stranger. He thought he had merely stormed out of an inconvenient meeting. He had no idea he'd just confessed to a federal agent. From that moment, I shut down. It was the performance of my life. I became the ghost of the wife I had been. I stopped asking questions. I stopped crying. I stopped challenging him. I floated through the cold, marble rooms of the estate, reading books I'd already read. My face a perfect, placid mask of defeat. And Grant loved it. He adored it. He mistook my silence for submission, my passivity for his victory. It made him careless. He started to flaunt his new, old life. He began taking Lauren's calls in the same room as me, his voice softening. Hi, Lauren. Yes, her equestrian schedule sounds perfect. He was already rebuilding the original family structure, and I was just a piece of furniture he hadn't yet moved into storage. He was so confident in my defeat that he saw no reason to hide. The formal summons to the dinner arrived, just as Agent Porter and I had anticipated. It was a text message from Grant, delivered with the cold efficiency of a corporate memo. Madeline. As we discussed, the family dinner is this Thursday, 8 o'clock, the Beacon Room. I know this is hard, but it's important for you to be there for the transition. Be dignified. Be dignified. It was their code word for be silent. It was the instruction they gave to the woman they were about to discard. I texted back a single word. Okay. The next day, Evelyn called. I saw her name on the caller ID and pressed record on my phone's app before answering. I put it on speaker, the device resting on the granite countertop. Hello, Evelyn. Madeline. Her voice was a shock. It was warm, syrupy, the voice of a loving matriarch comforting a bereaved child. It was the most calculating, venomous sound I had ever heard. I just wanted to call and see how you were. Holding up, dear. I am managing, Evelyn, I said, my voice deliberately flat and hollow. Good, good. That's for the best, she said, the warmth already fading, replaced by business. Now, about Thursday. Grant needs this to be seamless. The board for the Heritage Fund is delicate. They value family above all. The hypocrisy was so profound it was almost art. What do you want me to do? I asked. Just look lovely, dear. Wear something appropriate. Nothing too distracting. Support Grant. Hold your head high. This is your last official duty. Really. You just need to sit there, smile, and let Grant handle the family narrative. Do it for Grant. Keep up appearances. Keep up appearances. The recording was perfect. I understand, Evelyn, I whispered. Good girl, she said, and the line clicked. I saved the audio file, labeled it Evelyn Instruction Bait, MP3, and uploaded it to Porter's secure server. I was an active operative now, working inside my own home. My next move was surveillance. I called the Beacon Room. Hi, I said, pitching my voice to sound helpful, slightly scattered. This is Madeline Ellington, my husband. Grant, booked the private corner booth for Thursday. I am just finalizing the place cards, and I am so turned around. Would it be too much trouble for you to email me the table layout and the menu we selected? I just want to make sure everything is perfect for him. The maitre d' was instantly fawning. Of course, Mrs. Ellington, it is no trouble at all. I will send it to you immediately. 5 minutes later, the PDF was in my inbox. It was a detailed schematic. Evelyn at the head, Grant to her right, Lauren to her left, Sienna next, and me, Madeline, seated directly across from Lauren, in the center of the kill box, where everyone could watch me. I encrypted the file and sent it to Agent Porter with a simple message, floor plan. His reply was almost instant. Understood. We'll have 2 agents at the bar. Sightlines are good. We'll have a third at a rear table. They will not move until you give the signal. The signal. The envelope. I sent one last, encrypted message to Lauren at her private address. Lauren, this is it. Thursday. The Beacon Room. I will be bringing documentation. When I place a large manila envelope on the table, it will all begin. Until then, you are on their side. You are the returning queen. Do not look at me. Do not defend me. Be exactly the woman Evelyn wants you to be. Just be ready. Her reply came back in 1 minute. Ready. Grant's arrogance peaked the night before the dinner. He had won. I was beaten. He felt, in his magnanimous victory, the need to be generous. He found me in the library, pretending to read. He poured himself a whiskey, the light catching the expensive crystal. You've been good about this, Madeline, he said, his voice smooth and condescending, standing over me. I appreciate it. It shows character. I just nodded, my eyes down, my hand, hidden by the arm of the chair, pressed the record button on the small device in my pocket. I want you to know, he continued, taking a sip, that I am not a monster. Once the separation is final, and all this mess from the fund is cleaned up and attributed to the right parties. I will make sure you are taken care of. I looked up, my eyes wide. What do you mean? He lowered his voice, the sound rich with conspiracy. I mean that as long as you are quiet, as long as you sign the papers, endorse the narrative we're preparing, and don't make a fuss, your settlement will be significant. More than the prenup stipulates. You just have to be smart. Don't fight me. You can't win. Just be quiet. Let me handle the Crown Light situation, and you'll walk away very comfortable. Endorse the narrative. Let me handle the Crown Light situation. It was a direct, recorded offer of a bribe in exchange for my silence on a federal crime. It was the final nail. Thank you, Grant, I whispered, letting my voice sound grateful, broken. That is very generous. He patted my head. Actually, he patted me on the head, like a dog who had finally learned to sit. It's for the best. That night, I did one last thing, I went on my public social media profile, the one all of Evelyn's friends and the city's society mavens followed. I posted a simple, artistic photo of the sunset, taken from the window of our glass prison. The caption was short, "No matter what. Family is the priority." I watched the likes pour in from Evelyn's circle. They saw it. They saw the good wife, the defeated wife, the wife who was still clinging to the idea of family, still in love. They would report back to Evelyn that I was no threat. They would go to that dinner with their guard completely, utterly down. The next morning, the day of the dinner, I got a secure text from Agent Porter. "We have the warrants. Based on Mr. Ellington's recorded statements last night, we now have a warrant to search the Ellington family office and seize their servers. We're moving on that during your dinner. The dinner itself is just to provide the final, public, real-time confirmation. We need to hear them confirm the plan. We need Evelyn's voice on the girl. We'll be listening. Good luck, Mrs. Ellington." I laid out my dress. Dark blue, simple, elegant, the appropriate uniform Evelyn had requested. Then, I prepared my clutch. It was a black structured bag, large enough for my essentials. My phone, fully charged, already connected to Porter's open listening channel. A backup digital audio recorder, just in case. And the envelope. It was thick, manila, and heavy. It was filled with copies. Copies of the Crown Light Incorporation papers. Copies of the bank transfers. Copies of Jared's IP report, showing the forgery came from the Ellington server. Copies of the draft press release that would frame me. And right on top, a copy of a medical report. The one, dated 7 years prior, for a vasectomy. This envelope wasn't just evidence, it was my cue. It was the script for the final scene, and I was ready. I arrived at 7:15. The reservation was for 8. Grant's text had been clear, "Be there on time," but my own timeline was far more precise. I wore a simple silk coat over my dress and told the valet I was meeting a friend for a drink at the bar first. The Beacon Room was already filling up. The low hum of Money and Power was its background music. My first stop was the bar. It was a long, dark stretch of polished mahogany, and just as the schematic had shown, it had a perfect, elevated view of the entire dining room, especially the coveted corner booth. I saw them instantly, Agent Porter and 2 others. They were perfect. They looked like a trio of high-level finance bros, slightly bored, nursing expensive scotches. Porter wore a dark suit, his back to the room, but I knew his eyes were scanning the reflection in the mirror behind the bar. A man and a woman, his colleagues, were engaged in a quiet, animated conversation, looking for all the world like they were complaining about their stock options. They had been sent the photos. They knew Grant. They knew Evelyn. They knew Lauren. I sat at the far end of the bar, ordered a club soda, and opened my clutch to check my messages. This gave me a full, clear view of the restaurant's main floor. I mapped it in my head: main entrance, the one I'd use, kitchen doors, 2 of them, constantly swinging, loud, rear exit, past the restrooms, leading to a service alley. Porter would have that covered. Restrooms. This was my key. I needed to go there. I left my club soda, walked past the hostess stand, and headed to the women's lounge. It was an oasis of marble and gold, with a separate antechamber filled with velvet-cushioned stools and full-length mirrors. I locked myself in a stall and took a deep breath. My back against the cool marble. My heart was a cold, hard drum. One wrong move. If they saw me texting, if I looked nervous, if my signal to Porter was misinterpreted, I pulled out my burner phone, the one I'd used for Jared Cole. I sent my last, final text to Lauren. "I am here. He is about to make his move. Remember what is at stake. One night. That's all. After tonight, everyone will know who is right and who is wrong. Play your part until I put the envelope on the table. Do not look at me." I deleted the thread, powered down the phone, and tucked it deep into my purse, buried under the heavy manila envelope. The envelope. I had checked its contents a dozen times. Everything was a copy. The Crown Light forgery, the IP trace from Jared, the bank transfers, and I had added one last-minute item, the printout of Evelyn's email to Lauren. the one that said, "When the matter of her investigation becomes public, we will issue a statement about restoring the family's good name." I wanted Lauren to see that, to know in her bones that Evelyn's plan wasn't just to replace me, but to use my public execution as her and Lauren's re-entry announcement. I unlocked the stall and went to the mirrors. I looked at myself. The woman staring back was not Madeline Flores from the Brightline Cultural Initiative. That woman was earnest, a little naive, a believer in good intentions and hard work. She was gone. The woman in the mirror was pale. Her eyes were enormous, and she looked calm. It was a terrifying, reptilian calm. I was no longer a wife. I was no longer a victim. I was a witness. I was a person who was about to blow up a multi-generational fortress of lies. Not for revenge, but because it was the only way to get out from under the rubble. I was no longer the cultural assistant. I was the one setting the detonation charge. I reapplied my lipstick. My hand was perfectly steady. I walked back out. My table, the corner booth, was still empty. Good. I returned to the bar. As I passed, I accidentally dropped my napkin near Porter's stool. As I bent to retrieve it, I spoke to the floor, my voice barely a whisper. "Sightlines are clear. I am in place." I didn't wait for a reply. I picked up my napkin and went to the hostess stand. My entire demeanor changed. I was now Mrs. Grant Ellington. "Hello? Cynthia?" I said, reading her name tag, my voice warm and confident. "I'm Madeline Ellington, for the 8 o'clock reservation. I'm a bit early, but I just wanted to let you know." "Of course, Mrs. Ellington," she said, her smile practiced. "We are just preparing your table, Mr. Ellington. Ah, here he is now." I turned. Grant was striding through the door. Not with me, but with his family. Evelyn was on his arm, a queen surveying her territory. Lauren and Sienna were just behind them. Lauren wore the pearls. She looked beautiful, pale, and terrified. She was playing her part perfectly, her eyes fixed on Grant, refusing to look at me. Sienna just looked like she wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Grant's eyes found me at the hostess stand, and a flicker of pure, unadulterated annoyance crossed his face. This was not in his script. I wasn't supposed to be here, in his way. I was supposed to be a side character, arriving later. "Madeline," he said, his voice a tight, false smile. "You're early. Just eager to see the family." "Grant," I said, smiling just as brightly. He put his hand on the small of my back, a gesture that looked proprietary and loving to the hostess, but his fingers dug into my hip, a punishment, a warning. "Get in line." "We'll be seated now. Cynthia," he said. "Of course, Mr. Ellington." He ushered his mother in first, then Lauren. He pointedly seated Lauren in the spot that should have been mine, to his right, in the seat of honor. He then waved me and Sienna to the other side, the B list. He thought this was his first power play. He didn't know I'd already seen the schematic. Just as I was about to sit, my phone vibrated in my clutch. It was a text from Grant's number, a text he had clearly pre-written and sent, forgetting or not caring that I was already in front of him. I read the preview line, "I'm bringing Mom and Lauren up. You should come in a few minutes after us. Just to let things settle. It will be less awkward." He was still stage managing me, even when I was standing right there. He was so arrogant, so convinced of his narrative, that he was running his script on autopilot. The level of contempt was breathtaking. I looked up. The waiter was approaching. The agents at the bar were nursing their drinks. Porter had a direct line of sight. This wasn't right. The plan, the timing, it was all off. I stood up. "Madeline, what are you doing?" Grant hissed, his smile still plastered on his face. "You know, I am so sorry," I said, my voice full of bright, flustered panic. "I completely forgot to check on something with the valet, my medication. I think I left it in the car's glove box. Silly me." I turned to the table, to Evelyn. "I am so sorry. Evelyn, I will be right back. Please, don't let me interrupt." Evelyn just waved a dismissive, beer-ringed hand. Go," Grant was looking at me like I was insane. Madeline. 2 minutes, I chirped. Please, start without me. I walked away. I walked out of the dining room, past the hostess stand, and out the front door into the cool night air. The valet looked up, surprised. I stood on the sidewalk, my back to the restaurant, and I took a deep, shuddering breath. I looked at my watch. It was 7:56. I'd just bought myself my 4 minutes. I had given them the table. I had let them settle. I had let them resume their original family configuration. I was letting them have their moment of victory. To feel that I was disorganized, chaotic, and late. I was letting them feel superior. At precisely 8 o'clock, I pulled my burner phone from my purse, turned it on, and sent a final, one-word text to Agent Porter. Entering, I turned it off, put it away, and walked back into the beacon room. Cynthia at the hostess stand looked flustered. "Mrs. Ellington, you're back?" "All sorted," I said, with a brilliant smile. I walked into the dining room. They were all seated, just as I'd left them. The waiter was there, pouring water. The agents were at the bar, watching. The stage was perfectly set, exactly as I had planned. I was no longer the wife he'd dragged in. I was the final, deliberate arrival. I walked to the table. Grant looked up, his face a mask of thunder. "Madeline, you're late." "Only just," I said, sliding into my seat, the one they had assigned me, directly across from Lauren, and that is when Evelyn, full of wine and victory, high on the success of her restored family unit, leaned in, placed her hand on Lauren's shoulder, and delivered the line that would begin the public execution. She just didn't know it was hers. The words hung in the air, heavy and toxic. "Meet your replacement." I let the silence stretch for 1, 2 beats. I looked at Evelyn, at her cruel, triumphant smile. I looked at Grant, who was studying his wine glass, a silent co-conspirator. I looked at Lauren, the woman wearing my pearls, who looked like she was about to be sick. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I performed a single, perfect, theatrical gasp of mock surprise. And then I smiled. "Oh, Evelyn," I said, my voice suddenly light and clear, cutting through the heavy tension. "You have no idea how right you are." I picked up my heavy clutch bag, the black, structured one, and placed it on the table with a soft, definitive thud. The sound was louder than a gunshot in the suddenly silent restaurant. Grant's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "Madeline, don't." I unzipped the bag. "Don't what?" "Grant, don't interrupt your big night." I pulled out the thick, heavy, manila envelope. I was actually just thinking, this is perfect. It's so good, having the whole family here. I slid the envelope into the center of the table, right next to the untouched bread basket. It's just perfect. I was so afraid I was going to have to mail copies of this to all of you, and this just saves me so much on postage. Grant's face darkened. He recognized the tone. This was not the broken, pliable wife he'd been managing for the past week. "Madeline," I said, "that's enough. You're making a scene." He started to reach for the envelope, to wave it away like one of my emotional problems. "I wouldn't," I said, my voice hardening, stopping his hand mid-air. "Because this first page, Grant, is a very neat, itemized list of every wire transfer from your holding company into the fraudulent charity you established in my name. Crownlight Community Arts. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" Sienna, the teenager, actually looked up from her phone. "And this page," I continued, tapping the envelope, "is the report from my investigator. The one that shows the IP address used to electronically forge my signature on those incorporation documents. And Evelyn," I turned my smile to her, "you'll never guess where it traces back to, not just the Ellington family office, but to your own private, firewalled server, the one in your home study." Evelyn's aristocratic face flushed a deep, blotchy, ugly red. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. She reacted exactly as Agent Porter had predicted she would, with pure, entitled indignation. "You should not have those papers," she snapped, her voice breaking her own rules of decorum. rising just enough for the surrounding tables to look. That is private family business. It is how we protect the family. I just smiled at her. My phone, live in my purse, was capturing every single damning word. The agents at the bar, I knew, had just heard their final, real-time confirmation of conspiracy. Protect the family, I mused, savoring the words. Then I turned my head, slowly, to Lauren. She was paper white, her hands clenched in her lap. "And you?" "Lauren," I said, my voice softening just a little. "Did you really believe them? Did you think they were bringing you back out of love, out of some noble desire to restore the original family?" I pushed the envelope closer to her. "They needed a clean wife, Lauren. They needed a spotless, respectable prop to stand next to Grant when they finally threw me into the fire. Go on, look." Lauren's hand, trembling, reached out. She pulled the top pages. She saw the bank transfers. She saw the press release draft, the one with the headline about financial irregularities. She saw the words, "Ms. Flores appears to have," and the family is shocked and heartbroken. And then she saw the last page I had tucked in for her, the printout of Evelyn's email. "When the matter of her investigation becomes public, we will issue a statement about restoring the family's good name." She looked up, her eyes wide with a new, different kind of horror. She looked at Evelyn, not as a rival, but as a monster. She wasn't just a replacement. She was the cleanup crew, the alibi. That's when Grant lost it. The mask of the charming, reasonable billionaire didn't just slip. It shattered. "That's enough, Madeline," he snarled, his voice a low, vicious growl. He lunged across the table and grabbed my wrist, his fingers clamping down like a steel trap. "You are finished. Do you hear me? You are—" "I'd agree with that, Mr. Ellington." The voice was new. It was calm, cold, and held absolute authority. We all turned. Agent Porter was standing at our table, his suit perfectly pressed, his face impassive. The two agents from the bar were fanning out, one moving toward the kitchen exit, the other toward the main door. The restaurant, which had been buzzing with hushed whispers, went completely, utterly silent. The waiter who had been approaching with a bottle of wine froze, then backed away slowly. Porter looked not at Grant, but at his hand, still crushing my wrist. "Let go of your wife, sir." Grant, blinded by rage, didn't compute. "Who the hell are you? This is a private dinner. Get security." "I'm Agent Porter," he said, not even blinking. He pulled his badge from his suit jacket and placed it on the table, right on top of the spilled-out files. "State Financial Crimes Unit, and this dinner is now part of an active, ongoing investigation." Grant let go of my wrist like he'd been electrocuted. His face, just moments ago red with rage, was now a waxy, pale gray. He looked small. "Mr. Ellington," Porter continued, his voice conversational, "you're being detained for questioning regarding conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. As we speak, my team is executing a search warrant at the Ellington family office on Broad Street. They're seizing your servers." Evelyn made a small, strangled sound. She tried to rally. She put on her queenly voice, but it was thin and brittle. This is outrageous. You can't. This is a misunderstanding. My lawyers will—" "Evelyn Ellington," Porter said, turning his cold, unimpressed gaze on her. "We have you on tape, recorded not 10 minutes ago, confirming you are aware of this conspiracy and that it was your intent to protect the family. We also have you on tape from 2 days ago, instructing your asset manager, and I quote, to shift the entire responsibility to the girl. You will be coming with us to clarify those statements." Evelyn's hand, the one with the massive diamond, began to tremble. She reached for her water glass and knocked it over. Water spilled across the white tablecloth, soaking the evidence. Porter was about to lead them away. Grant was sputtering, finally speechless. Evelyn looked, for the first time since I'd met her, like a terrified old woman. But I wasn't finished. I had one more thing. "Oh, Grant," I said, my voice dripping with a fake, sweet sympathy. I reached into the envelope, past the wet files, and pulled out the last, single piece of paper, the one I had saved. The vasectomy report. I slid it across the table, right through the spilled wine. I almost forgot. He looked at it, his eyes, for a second, didn't understand. "That's the report for the vasectomy you had. Grant," I said, my voice rising just a bit. "For the agents, for the restaurant, for the world. The one you had 7 years ago, the one you had 2 years before you met me, the one you conveniently forgot to mention for the entire year you had me pumping my body full of hormones, crying my eyes out, and blaming myself, while you knew it was impossible." I looked him straight in the eye. "I've already sent a copy to Alicia Romero. So when you try to tell your story, when you try to paint me as the greedy, ambitious wife who was just after your money, I don't think anyone is going to believe you." Porter nodded, a grim, satisfied look on his face. "Let's go." Quietly. The agents moved in. Grant was pulled to his feet. Evelyn looked like she was going to faint. As they were being led away, Porter's female colleague looked at Lauren and Sienna, who were huddled by the wall. "And you, ma'am, do you have anything to add?" Lauren, who had been frozen, finally moved. She stood up, her back straight, the Ellington pearls gleaming under the restaurant lights. She looked at Grant, his face ashen. She looked at Evelyn, who was weeping. Then she looked at me. She took a deep, shuddering breath. "I'll be cooperating," she said, her voice clear and strong. I confirm everything she said. They told me they were going to blame her. They told me it was my duty to come back. The trap was sprung. The dinner party they had designed to be my execution, the one where they would anoint my replacement, had become their own. The replacement had, in fact, changed the entire story. Thank you for listening to this story. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.